Alter Rebbe's Shar Yichud Ve'emunah, in this mystical text in the Tanya, where he says that on that in eschatological times, in those days, God will take out the sun from its sheath, and then the sinners will be burned up. But in the same chapter, the author says the sun represents chesed, right, loving kindness, which then means that what the sinners are being burned up with is loving kindness, not justice.
Right.
And the simple meaning of that to me was always that they're just ashamed of themselves. At that point, God's mercy is so overflowing that a person who's been living with sin up until that moment just can't stand the shame of existence, and they burn up. They burn up, as it were, from the inside. So is it that in Isaiah 53, is there a similar type of thing happening when we look on, the people look on to this Messiah, and this whole time he's been stigmatized and ostracized as the person who's sick and therefore the sinner, and suddenly we realize, oh my God, this person has been carrying my sins. And so I'm overwhelmed with shame when I see this Messiah figure.
It doesn't talk about shame or suffering on our behalf. That's not the emphasis here. In these verses, the emphasis is we just realized we had it all wrong. But we had it all wrong because we assumed that if he was suffering on his own accord. And now we find out, no, actually he's suffering in our accord.
Seeing that somebody, understanding that somebody who's been suffering just seeing that to me is such a huge, and it requires so much eye-opening on the person who's seeing. Right? This whole time you're thinking, person, Nebuch, look at him, poor guy.
That's really paradigmatic of Mashiach, which is a time of eye-opening.
So that's what I'm asking.
We're going to enter into a whole new phase, a whole new reality where all of a sudden everything that we thought was isn't, and everything that we thought isn't is.
So the meek shall inherit the earth, as we say, right?
And so many other verses like that.
Yeah.
So when Mashiach comes, there's going to be a total refocusing of reality. This is true. And this is one of the paradigms of how we had it all figured out. We actually had nothing figured out.
And does it make sense to think, I'm just drawing a comparison, I don't know what you think of that, but does it make sense that we would be struck by such remorse and shame at what we've been doing all along, hurting this other person, the other, and even it's emblematic of another person that we always cause suffering. To Messianic days, we suddenly realize what we've been doing all along? Or
I don't see that emphasis.
Okay, all right.
I don't see the emphasis on our feeling of shame, on our feeling bad. To me, the emphasis is us having this awakening, this awareness.
So why? Because otherwise,
but then the question is,
why would he have to be a suffering?
Right.
The question is, why is he a suffering servant to begin with? Why not make him a handsome guy who's well dressed? He's got his faculties, possessed, and
when the right time comes, press the button.
He shows himself. So he's let us see. He's been a humble guy. He's been he's been like an academic somewhere, cloistered in a ivory tower somewhere, or maybe not that. He's been a blue collar worker. Right? Finally, once he's showing his true colors.
I think the answer to this, and it is very hard to understand. Having said that, I think that the answer can be understood on two levels. The first is that the way we see Mashiach as his being a neshama, a soul, that's connected to all souls. Very much likened to the concept of the brain. So when we talk about the cosmic Jewish people, we often invoke anthropomorphical terms. The guf, gigantic body. And we say that there's Einei Ha'eda, the eyes of the nation. We talk about the Melech being the heart, Lev Ha'am. We talk about him being the Kaved, being the liver. We talk about the simple people. We talk even about the heels. That's one of the interpretations in the words Ikvos Mashiach, the footsteps of Mashiach, that the people will be at the very lowest level. The brain always feels the pain of the rest of the body. It's not because the brain is loftier that it is exempt. It's because the brain is loftier that it is necessarily connected. So if Mashiach is who Mashiach is, which means he is what's called in the language of Kabbalah Yechida, the pinnacle, the atomic essence of the cosmic Jewish soul, then what follows is that he has to feel the pain of the sins. Otherwise he's not Mashiach.
It sounds like he's feeling it almost willingly.
You could say that.
Because if it was willy-nilly, then what's the point of...
It's not a game. It's not like God saying, okay, somebody sinned, here's another kick in the pants. It's like saying, my brain feels the pain in my body.
Right.
And you can't say to somebody, so, what do you care? It's just your toe. Cut your toe off. Maybe the other toe can say that. Maybe the finger can say it. The brain can never agree to something like that. So the brain necessarily feels the pain of the rest of the body. And this concept is invoked not only with regard to Mashiach, but also with regard to super tzaddikim. There's a famous story told that a young man, a chassid of the Mittler Rebbe, the second Rebbe of Lubavitch, Rabbi Dovber, was sitting in his office, receiving private audience, and a young man came and he talked about his sins. They were not nice sins. And the story goes, the Mittler Rebbe rolled up his sleeve and showed him how shriveled he looked. He wasn't healthy. And he said, I want you to know that physically, the stress and anguish that I have been having from your behavior has had a direct impact on me. And the Rebbe uses this story to illustrate the deep relationship between a Rebbe and a chassid.
Don't you see that how it dovetails? I'm sorry I'm harping on this, maybe, but it brings it right back to this idea of shame. That how is that person, I'm assuming this story must go on, that person did tshuva there, right there and then, on the moment. So why would he not do tshuva? He goes to this great man, a man whom he reveres. Obviously, that's why he's going to him. He feels bad about what's going on. And suddenly he realizes, you know what, I mean, every sinner knows he causes himself pain. But the thought that, for example, chas v'shalom, you cause your father pain, or your mother pain, whom you love and revere, that's unbearable.
But you know, Michael, every wayward child, and there are people with wayward children, bring incredible grief to their parents.
Yeah, but you know,
there's no greater joy than parenthood. And there's also no greater grief. You know, the famous story told these two.
But they blame their parents. A child could only do that, could only maintain
that's
themselves
only in
that
modern
behavior.
times. Now we have this new escape called blame your parents.
Yeah.
Freudian psychology. Nothing's my fault. It's always.
So that's what I'm saying. In this situation, he obviously honors the Rebbe. That's why he's coming to him. He loves this Rebbe.
Certainly.
So he must be horrified at what he's doing to the Rebbe.
You could say that.
So
and you could even say that the Rebbe wanted to show him how much he cared about him. You know, they tell the story about these two grandmas who meet. They hadn't seen each other since high school days. Right. And one tells about her children and her grandchildren and says to the other one, how about you? She says, I have no children. So he says, no children? What do you do for aggravation?